All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Industry Chat number 3 for interactive design. I'm super excited tonight. Cydney, I've been eagerly waiting for this conversation since we started this, knowing that this was the project we were going to be in, and to be able to ask you to be a part of this. So super excited about this chat. We're going to focus on personas and building empathy for telling a great story in UX and building a great product and making sure that it meets the user's needs for what you're launching. So welcome to Youngstown State University's industry chat for interactive design. Welcome, Cydney Marsh.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. Cydney and I have known each other for about 7 years or so. I think she's one of the best in the industry when it comes to user research and helping designers solve the right problems for the right users and really setting up work for a great product and a great solution for our end users. So Cydney, why don't you maybe start to talk a little bit about your background, what you went to school for, what you do now, and kind of what you do in your role.
Yeah, I originally didn't go to school for design. I actually learned traditional graphic design through YouTube and downloaded Photoshop in order to fix people's MySpaces back in the day. So that's kind of what I was doing 10, 11 years ago, and was just kind of doing that on the side for family and friends, small businesses and things like that. And I really wanted to be an architect or a teacher. And as I got closer and closer to that time to get to college, it became very, very acutely aware to me that being an architect was super expensive and not the most secure of jobs out there. So that one kind of went off to the wayside. And becoming a teacher, I worked at a dude ranch with a bunch of other people down in the YMCA area of Arizona, in which I had to teach people how to shoot bows and arrows and do like a whole after school program and all kinds of other stuff. And quickly learned that maybe teaching wasn't always for me either. So I went into college for just a simple undergrad, did a bunch of trial classes looking at Italian antiquity and Greek mythology and sports marketing, all kinds of stuff. And
I'm learning so much about you right now. Just based on
I went on a wild ride for like a solid 2-3 years, all the while doing graphic design as kind of like my side business to pay for school. Because like I was a kid on food stamps, not doing super well family-wise, but we were working our way through it and everything. And so I was able to get a scholarship through academics and try and figure it out as I went. I tried not to waste that scholarship as much as possible for my parents' sake and my grandparents' sake. But I found out as I was doing graphic design for a couple of small businesses in Tucson that there was this thing called customer experience design, so CX, which if you guys all know that's like all different acronyms for UX that basically mean the same thing. So I started doing that for a small permanent makeup artist in town. And so I was not only handling kind of her front desk stuff and interacting with the people that she had as a customer day to day, but I was also doing her entire website design, all of her marketing, the app that she had to do all of her payments and different products for her small business in town. And I really, really liked working for a brick and mortar, but I wanted to know more about this industry and get more experience. So it was actually my mom who was working out here in Tennessee who told me that there was like all these great companies that were doing this kind of thing. And if I really wanted to focus on design and how to make that more fluid into my life, I could maybe do an internship for a few months and try it out. So I went to the healthcare industry of all places because that felt like a very opposite end of permanent makeup artists, focusing on skincare, and doing that on a small scale to a larger scale. And I was put into an HR department where I was designing PowerPoints and getting very, very bored very quickly. So I met up through a bunch of different interviews with people who worked in HR to see if they knew of any other design positions going on in the company or at adjacent companies. And they introduced me to a couple great directors who actually ended up being Ryan's and my boss. So he told me about this great new UX program that he was going to set up. And if I decided to upend my life and quit my program over at University of Arizona and move out towards Tennessee, that I might have a job for me. So I did just that in like a week. I quit all of my side jobs, kept up a lot of the graphic design ones, picked up a couple others while I was here in Tennessee, so I could do that on the side with my internship. I actually worked at a newspaper and a magazine, doing that kind of thing. And then as I started my internship and soon my contract and full-time job in UX for healthcare, I started picking up more freelance for UX and focused more heavily on the research side of things than the design side of things. Design started to become my pathway into this business, but it's not my sole focus anymore. It's more of the thing that I do for fun on the side, including my screen printing business and all kinds of other stuff I do. I don't sleep, but I still have fun, so that's good.
Well, there are a few things you mentioned there that I thought were pretty interesting. I mean, your background and the different experiences you have from a design perspective, and even you mentioned, you know, wanting to be an architect and wanting to maybe go into teaching. Like hearing you describe that and knowing your kind of passion for solving problems, finding solutions for teaching. I know that for sure, and wanting to empower others to do testing and research. It makes total sense now why you're in this position, or why you have the passion for user research. But I think one of the important things I think you mentioned too was just the different types of things that you did on the side, whether it was from a financial perspective, or if it was you just wanting to do your own thing or having some fun with, you know, or starting screen printing and things like that. That's the thing for me that I've always felt from a design perspective. We have such a unique gift as creatives, as designers, because you can have an impact in any industry at any time in a variety of different ways, whether that's print or digital, screen printing, you know, application design, user research, whatever. There's so many doors that can open. And for how you had mentioned landing your job here in Tennessee, once that door opens, it might be PowerPoint, but it might lead to something that leads to something else, and kind of the doors just continue to open. I thought that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you just never quite know where you're going to end up. I think if I had told myself 10 years ago when I was looking at different colleges and my family was asking me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you're not going to be an architect? If I had told myself, don't worry, there's this random job you've never heard of before that's going to just
called CX,
be
UX,
the perfect
UI,
no.
UXR,
Yeah. I would not believe myself.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting how I feel like some of it's not a feel like thing. It's a for sure thing. The companies that we look to who have great design. Think about the app, like from a digital perspective that we use on our phones, whether that's Apple products or Google products. You know, name any, you know, Fortune 50 company who's great at design. They have a large team dedicated to UX and user research. It might be called customer research or customer experience. But the biggest groups, the biggest companies invest in hearing from their users, hearing from potential users, and building products that match those needs, that match both their needs and the market trends and things like that. So that's why I'm really excited about having you on to talk about kind of your role in personas and testing and research, because it's a whole nother arm in the UX process that if you're, you know, a designer who's really not, you know, passionate about pixel pushing and the nitty gritty UI, UX, there's a place for you in UX. It might be in UX research, which is where kind of you lie at right now in kind of your role that I know. But maybe talk to us a little bit about, you know, what you do as far as kind of a day-to-day and how your work helps sets up maybe kind of the UI portion of it that people ultimately see once something goes live.
Yeah, so a lot of my day-to-day has to deal first with the business aspect of things. So it's more important for me to know the goals of the stakeholders and the people who are going to be funding the project, or they own the small business or big business, what they're aiming for. Because if I just come up with my own ideas on my own of where I think they should be improving, or I solely only talk to their audience, I might be losing track of what they're trying to innovate on, or what specific number they're trying to reach. So I'll often reach out to them first, get kind of a skinny of the project that they're wanting to do, or if they're wanting to do a full-blown revamp of their business, I might talk to them on that and see if they have any sort of analytics for me to look at, whether that be customer service surveys that they have and they've gathered up demographics from that. If they've got an application that has crash analytics through something like Amplitude, Firebase, Google Analytics, or a website that has the same thing, I might look at that. And if they have nothing along those lines, I'll simply get their location and talk about who they think their audience is, or who they're wanting to target that maybe they haven't seen in their business or come into their app yet. So once I get that done and move on from there, I can start actually looking for the people that are showing up in those analytics, or from the people that they mentioned they might want to target in the future that they haven't yet seen. So I'll spin up surveys and start up a bunch of things that we call discovery work, in which it's mostly just me having a chat with people, just like this call right here. Sometimes it's pre-recorded, what we call unmoderated testing, where I can fill out a survey for people to answer at their leisure whenever they're setting that up, and that can be sent through places like big software giants like usertesting.com or UserZoom. If it's something that I'm doing freelance for a small business, I usually opt for something like a Google Forms, or set up something through Facebook groups. People are super active on those, and even Instagram ads. You can grab people through different surveys on that. So it's really easy to hop into user research once you know what your stakeholders want, and the minute you go and try and seek out the people to talk to, it just becomes a natural, fluid conversation like so. I'll usually record them, so that way I'm not sitting there scribbling, writing down notes. So the other half of my day is usually after my morning or early afternoon user interviews or stakeholder interviews. I'll go through and re-review those recordings and try and figure out what the heck they said. Scribble down any sort of key highlights, areas for opportunities, anything that's a success. I'm a big believer of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, and that's true in UX too. If someone's already really liking a design and it's working for them, there may be some small tweaks and improvements, but you don't want to change it too much that it's jarring for the user or for the business on their side of things as well. And then after that's all done, I go and cuddle my dog and work on screen printing, or design a logo for fun, or more recently I've been doing paper invitations for weddings and things. So cool. That's just kind of a day in the life of Cyd.
I love it. And I know you're focused primarily on those like 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, if you want to throw that in there. You talked about architecting and teaching, and for me, I feel like as you described that, you're kind of an archaeologist too. I mean, you're trying to dig down and find the root problem, or the root why, and how to solve it for the user, to set up then, I know you do wireframes and things like that, to help folks who are more dedicated to UI, and walking that part of the process out, set them up for success. And of course, everybody's a part of the process along the way. But I think, we've talked about in this class before, how you as the designer might not often be the actual end user of that product, or fit the demographic that's being, that product's being designed for. And that's a challenge, but that's really where empathy and understanding and being willing to sit across the table from somebody, whether physically or virtually, and have a conversation about what their needs would be for a product, or what type of gap a product like X might fill. in their, in their life or in their world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you mentioned archaeology, because there's all kinds of different offshoots. Just in my networking with other UX researchers or designers who turn into researchers, or any other industries, there's a lot of people that come from anthropology, teaching, psychology, all kinds of stuff that feeds into this. Basically, if it's a study of people, if you're very, very interested in finding out people's personalities and what makes them tick, not necessarily even great at communicating and talking, UX research could be for you, because there's a lot of stuff with just trying to figure out what works for people and what doesn't work for people, and then doing that in a moderated test where you don't even have to speak. Or if you are a great communicator, you just love talking to people, you can sit on calls like this and record them, and even have people go through prototypes of things and ask for their feedback on it live in real time, and kind of expand on it further than just a simple survey.
Yeah. And for this class, we're focusing on interaction design, interactive design. And one of the things that I've been, trying to challenge the class is to think beyond just the screen, think beyond just the thing that the ultimate end product of making it look good and pretty and, sexy and awesome and whatever. And trust the process, for lack of a better term, and walk through kind of the UX process of discovery and research and wireframing and designing, iteration and testing. And so, we've done things like we started off in project one, and we did some mood boards and some wireframing, and then ultimately UI design. Project number two, we did mood boards again, but we did information architecture. And so we actually kind of mapped out kind of the skeleton or the framework of that website, and then moved into wireframing and building a style guide or a design system, and then ultimately now building the UI for the website. And so we've been layering in different aspects of UI, UX design, of the UX process from project to project. And so here in this next project, we're going to be focusing not at all on the design side, and more a few weeks on the user research side of it. And so we're introducing, user personas, and building a kind of a mission statement, or a kind of a purpose statement for your product, and then building personas. And then ultimately, this is a sneak peek for anybody watching, actually talking to those users to see what goals they would have, based off those personas, see what goals they would have for this potential product that they're building on. So maybe if you can, talk to us a little bit about, I know personas are a part of your day-to-day, but maybe from your perspective, what kind of role does a persona, have in the UI UX overall process?
I love personas so much. Okay, so this is something that in the design space has existed for a long time, well before UX was even a branded thing, and trending on Twitter or anything like that. So personas are the guidepost for anything that you're designing. And I usually have two routes that I go about them. Something that in Undercover UX Design, if you're interested in that book, it's about this big. It can teach you all about them. And it's like a day read. But they talk about cut price personas, in which all of the heavy lifting for what makes a really powerful persona is slashed in half. The price of actually going through it in your time and your money and your resources is limited down to just the bare bones guidepost of what you need to start a persona. Because sometimes when you're making personas, it's hard to imagine a person in your head and make it as realistic as possible. So I usually start there, and that's just built off of data and analytics, whether that be from the place themselves, they have the crash data, they have user surveys that they've already brought back from customer experience surveys, or they have their own idea of who is their customer base based off of sales, anything along those lines. If they have that, I'll utilize that. I'll utilize stuff from stakeholder interviews where I'm talking to the business themselves about their goals and their ideas of what they're wanting to target. Sometimes it comes straight from the US government. All of the data for zip codes is freely available from the census. If you guys are wondering where that survey goes to, it goes to people like me trying to figure out who lives in a certain area. There's this great website called Esri, ESRI, and they have a free zip lookup that I usually will find a local McDonald's or Walgreens near whatever is the business that I'm trying to do, and take down all the different tapestries. And those will have great snapshots of the people that are living in those areas, their interests, their TV likes, things that they're buying at the grocery store generally from just major surveys that are sent out and from census data. So it helps me build a great snapshot for that cut price persona to try and figure out who I'm trying to reach before I go out and send out Facebook group, Instagram groups, or user testing surveys to try and talk to the real people. Once I have that cut price persona built, which is usually just a quick story and some adjectives of who they are, a picture of a real person, that is key. Please do not make triangles as a persona and name them after silly things. It's very important that you look at a cut price persona or a full price persona as if they're a real person, as if they're your neighbor or your friend. So that way, when you're in those tough design decisions, you alone or the entire team can rally around this person who may not exist, but at least they look real and they sound real and they have a whole backstory and adjectives to think of their personality. So that cut price will have that face, quick story, and adjectives. And once we move on to the surveys, we can start getting into the real nitty gritty of what makes that person or that type of user group tick. What is some of the pain points? What are some of the areas of possibilities for great successes, things that they like, things they don't like? And then I usually have as my third key, any sort of purpose. So what's their goal at the end of the day? Not just what they like and dislike as those pain points and possibilities that are awesome in success, but also what are they trying to get to and what's maybe stopping them or helping them along those ways. So you're taking those adjectives and that quick storyline and that photo that was so easy to recognize as a real person and making it blossom into an even more believable person. So that way when you're up at 2 a.m. working on a hard design or in an 8 a.m. meeting pitching something, everybody can rally behind, oh no, we're designing this for, I'm trying to think of a random name that I can use. I'll use my friend Cattell. We use real names of real people. So we'll say we're designing for Cattell. This isn't Cydney and Ryan, who are in their 30s area. They're designing for someone who's maybe older or younger or dealing with different social media, different applications. Maybe they own a Google Home. Different stuff like that that we can focus on that's not ourselves.
Yeah, and even, you know, what you had mentioned, I think at the beginning there, I think too, what's really helpful about personas is it gives you that guidepost. It gives you that understanding of this is who we're designing it for. It's not me, it's not you, potentially. It's this person who's real and who has life experiences, who has pain points and frustrations throughout their day. And that's one of the things I think that has always helped me, or really, actually, it's really humbling from a UX perspective to invest in talking with the user, to building a persona, because it makes you realize that your product or what you're building is just a brief snapshot in this individual's day-to-day life. And so how do you make your product less stressful when maybe they've just spilled coffee all over them because they had to slam on their brakes because traffic was horrible that morning and they're trying to navigate to wherever? How does your product plays a role in their life story somehow? And so by you learning about their experiences, their pain points, their frustrations, and using a persona to help guide you through that, it just makes sure that you're building a great product for them and not for just a stakeholder or just you as the designer. Then you had also mentioned too, having analytics and research and data to back up personas. If you're, starting from scratch or, ideating about what a product could be or what you might want to do, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's okay to hypothesize what your persona might be, and tailor that as you talk to users, as you talk to individuals who represent the type of persona, and then come back and tailor that persona after you've learned a little bit more about who that person is.
Yeah, UX is very much a science-based design. There's the ability to make theories and hypotheses, and educated guesswork is going to be your best friend. It's important to stay always curious, so that way you take those guesses, those hypotheses, and back them up and figure out exactly what's going on. You may even be wrong with your original guess, and that's okay. Because what's awesome about the science of UX is that it's lean. It's very easy and quick to find out when you may have been gearing towards the wrong guidepost, and you might need to pivot just slightly. So that's why I always start with those stakeholder interviews, so that way I don't go running down a path, seeking down a person, only to turn around at an 8 a.m. meeting with a business partner to find out that that was not at all what they wanted, or they've already got that in their analytics and sales. I'll start with that first and do that cut price persona. And let's just come up with a hypothetical situation where I only have one business leader that I can talk to, and they have no analytics whatsoever, and they're just starting out in their business, so they don't even have any sales. I still can help them out with UX by asking them what they think they're going to be gearing towards, even if they might be a little bit off base in their products, or they might be completely on point with their products, which is super easy. And I can ask them about what they want their customers to be saying on reviews, what they want to have happen at the end of the day, what they want to be said about them in the news, their overall goal at the end of the day, and if there's any sort of limitations they can expect with what they have. And then I can go forward and make that cut price persona purely off of a hypothesis and send out my surveys towards those targeted personas that new person on the scene may be wanting to get, and fix and tailor that cut price persona, which is nothing but a picture, a name, a story, and adjectives, to the heavy meat and potatoes of, hey, brand new business owner, you were actually kind of on point. Here's more detail. Did you know that this age group, or the people that are interested in this kind of travel or in this kind of music app, are extremely interested in this, or have an Alexa at home, have these concerns about their data, just based off of the zip codes that you're going to be looking at.
Things that you might not normally know unless you talk to somebody.
Yes, exactly. So there's a lot that can build from just a hypothesis. I always say that a blank page can be super intimidating, but just the little bit that you get down, all of a sudden will lead you down a rabbit hole of endless curiosity.
You have to start somewhere. We've talked, so, I think what we've been talking about is the analytical, the science side of UI, UX design, which I love. Like you, I'm classically trained, graphic designer, kind of, have always done things on the side. Once we moved into kind of the role of UI, UX design, I was really scared to talk to users, because this is my baby that I worked on, for so long. And now I'm being asked to put this in front of users, or to have somebody test it, which, similar to a design critique. If you think about putting your work in front of somebody and having your peers kind of critique your work, there's something a little bit more intimidating about putting your work up in front of strangers, personally, to me. But once you embrace that and you see that as like, I want to maybe talk, we have about maybe 5-10 minutes or so here before we wrap it up. I want to talk a little bit about testing and how to ensure that the product, you've defined your personas, you have your person or demographic you're designing for, your audience you're designing for. You've designed the product based off their needs and your expertise as a designer coming into play. Now, how do you make sure that that actually is the right solution, a great product for them at the very end? For me, I'll just say, once I embraced testing, it really opened my eyes to, making sure we're constantly delivering great product, and even, not having your own expectations so high that they can't be reset or changed, because that's job security. If you get something wrong the first time, test it, try again, learn again, repeat the process, and just, make a great product at the end of it. But maybe just talk a little bit about how do you ensure that, your product you're building, the design you have, is the correct one, and the role of testing in UI UX design.
I think my love of testing comes from one too many client briefs where I would go through and I had a really, really solid idea of where I wanted the design to go. And every once in a while, I got one very challenging client every few months that would be like, well, why do you think that would be the best design? And me thinking that I would be really great at design, it was, well, it's cuz. So what's great about testing is you can actually verify those thoughts and see if it's working for you or if it's not working with you, with the caveat of you must make sure that you are not biasing your tests.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of tips that I have for making sure that anything that you're testing, you're not leading the witness, like they say on all those crime shows and court shows.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're always providing a balance. So for every positive question that you ask about your design, always ask a harsh negative about it as well, to kind of leave these open-ended areas where users can voice their thoughts of pure joy and also pure pain. And you can fix those before you get to those client briefings and say, hey, look, this is this great thing that we've designed. The next thing is to make sure you always have other observers. So if you're a lone UX researcher working on a freelance project like I am some evenings, I might have my boyfriend come in, check on a video and say, hey, am I off base with this observation? Are you hearing kind of the same thing? Or are you hearing a completely different thing than I am? Or I might run it by a colleague, like I might run something past Ryan or one of our friends from the industry. And if it's a moderated interview, I often, if they're comfortable with it and don't think that it'll hinder some feedback, I'll often invite the stakeholders themselves to come in and sit on a user interview on mute, no video showing, potentially even just a second recording of it if they don't want to have their little face pop up in the call. So that way they can also hear straight from the users, and we can have a really great candid discussion about what I heard as the designer and researcher and what they heard as the business owner. I might even invite a bunch of other designers and researchers if it's a giant team I'm working on to come and sit down on this, and we have like a movie day and eat popcorn and grimace at all the points where we thought users were going to do swimmingly well on our prototypes, or cheer when they do exactly what we expected them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I love those moments, and for me, it's been a process to get there and to enjoy seeing your work critiqued, or like seeing, because for me, it's seeing you. Everybody has blind spots, in every aspect or area of life. When it comes to design, designers have blind spots when it comes to their own work. We get so ingrained and so detailed into making this one portion of the product just so great and awesome that we neglect or we overlook a piece that is actually probably the most important thing for the user. And so being able to get your product or get your screens in front of somebody and to get their candid, real feedback is so valuable, because it illuminates your blind spots as a designer, and in the end makes that product that much better. I would rather have the burden be on my personality or ego as a designer being just crumbled by hearing a user struggle with the product than to put that burden on them after it goes live and to have them frustrated with something that I built, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can go into any design project with sympathy, right? You can imagine that you want to be helping out these people and be so good-hearted and have talent, or maybe you're just starting out and you're nervous about your talent, and so you might be very attached to this first baby that you have. But going in with just sympathy will only pacify yourself, not necessarily just the user or just the business partner. You want to try and get as far as possible with all three parties involved. So by doing testing, you move that sympathy level to a deeper empathy level, because we can't be everybody. We can't understand everybody's perspectives, but we can seek to understand their perspectives and try and resonate anything that they may have that's going on in their lives, and make sure that our designs are sticking with them in the positive moments of their lives and not sticking with them in the negative days of their lives, so they can move on and keep enjoying their day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I know we've went a little longer in this industry chat. Cydney and I could probably talk for hours about UX and research and all that. We talked about personas and the role of just setting a guidepost to get started. You talked about, the fear of a blank page. Well, that blank page has endless possibility for you. And so oftentimes it's just saying, who do I think might use this product? Doing some competitor research and things like that to kind of get your bearings, but who do I think might use this product? Building out a little persona, talking to them, designing for those needs, and then putting it back in front of them for testing. And so in project 3, as we're working on for this class, we're going to focus on personas, still figuring out schedule wise for the last project, but hopefully we can get some testing in there. And if not, as you move into your career from a design perspective and things like that, always test with your ultimate end user, always get their feedback. It's just going to make the product better and you better as a designer. Cydney, one last question. We have about 2 minutes before I want to wrap up here. What are some go-to blogs and resources for you as a UX researcher that are your go-to? And try to keep it within 2 minutes. I know you're a library when it comes to this.
Oh, I've got so many. I can send you the full list to share with your students, along with some templates I have for personas. But I think the few that would come off to the top of my head would be UX Design CC. They're on Medium. I really love Nielsen Norman, and I really love Baymart Institute, if we're focusing specifically on marketing. So those would kind of be my power 3 that I go to, and then Medium always
those are
channels
great.
on UX planning and stuff.
Yeah, those are awesome. And I'll list those here below in this module. But Cydney, thanks so much for jumping on tonight. Hopefully everybody found this valuable. Try to work one more in here, industry chat. But Cydney, thanks again. Thanks so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Cyd.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.